Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast, episode number 90.
90!
10 away from triple digits.
Woo!
We're here. It's a Wednesday. I was about to say a beautiful Wednesday, but
It's snowing?
yeah, it's April. It's snowing. We live in Ohio. You know the drill.
That sucks.
But yeah, this episode will be a little extra special,
Yes,
even
it
if the
is.
weather outside is anything but. I'm Noah B. That's Dominic Salee. We're midway through the week. How are you, my friend?
Midway through the week. Hey, it's been a good week so far. A great week to come. A great weekend coming up. We've got some friends coming up. We've got some fights coming up. We got some good food lined up in the weekend. It's just a good week. And I'm really looking forward to this episode. This is your baby here. Really, both of these last two special episodes you have birthed into existence. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm excited. This is a really unique idea. It's based upon 3 title fight cards. Obviously, this weekend we get the 8th installment of a 3 title fight card. So what better way? I love it.
No, great setup there, the way to introduce what we're talking about today. You're right. It is the history of 3 title fight cards in the UFC, which it's kind of an interesting subject because I don't think I've really heard anybody deep dive into these like this, really.
So welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, it's breaking new ground here.
Yeah.
But yeah, this will be this Saturday, the 8th of the UFC's 3 title fights cards. We just had one a couple months ago. We're still going to talk about it. But, you know, it's funny when you look back at kind of when these cards happened.
They're so
for the
staggered.
most part, it's very staggered, but they're stacked together.
Yeah.
For like 3 at a time. So kind of wondering if that's going to be a trend. It always seems like it's very random. You know,
Yeah.
obviously right now, COVID stuff, it's...
The fact that we're getting 2 within a month and a half of each other that's pretty crazy.
I mean, I know they stacked this one this Saturday because it's the first one with fans back.
True.
So it's probably an outlier,
sense,
but
yeah.
it's just very interesting the way that it's kind of... Once you visualize it, see it in front of you, it's just very interesting.
And I mean, think about how hard that is to get 3 champions on a card.
Yeah.
I mean, people are always injured and just staggered on when they fight. So to be able to line up 3 out of 12 divisions, I mean, that's hard to do.
Well, and what's funny is it's easier today,
Yeah.
but you go back to the
talk
good old
about.
days, you could never get that many.
Yeah.
And I mean, they did it once, and we'll talk about why they probably didn't do it again for a while.
People are going to see this if they're watching on YouTube or like on our social medias and be like, wait, what's that one up there in the corner? So, let's go.
So we're going to go in reverse chronological order.
Yes.
So we're going to start with the newest cards first,
The one we just talked
and
about.
then we'll go all the way back to the very first time the UFC did this. Just because this newest one here we did already...
Fresher memory on
Yeah,
these.
you know, we've already talked about this card and the one before it even a little bit. So, the most recent 3 title fight card that the UFC has held was UFC 259.
Yeah.
Held on March 6th of 2021 at the UFC Apex. We had our main event, Jan Blachowicz, the light heavyweight champion, going up against Israel Adesanya, who was the middleweight champion. Co-main event,
The GOAT.
Amanda Nunes, the women's featherweight champion, defending against Megan Anderson. And then the men's bantamweight champion, Petr Yan, defending against Aljamain Sterling.
Yep.
So, I know we've talked about this. This one might be
very
a little bit
fresh,
different,
yeah.
but as a whole, when you're talking about 3 title fights here, that we
only
got,
looking at the title fights.
what were your thoughts on these fights and kind of, the matchup, the stacking of the card, what were your overall thoughts of kind of these 3 fights as a whole?
So, Sterling Yan.
Yeah.
Crazy high pace. Great fight, to be truthful with you.
I still picked it my fight of the night.
In the worst possible ending that you could have had to such a
literally
great fight.
the worst.
Obviously, we know that Sterling comes away and new because of an illegal knee disqualification of Petr Yan. Really just terrible stuff. You hated to see it, especially in a fight where Yan was really starting to pour it on in that one. After Sterling had started so strong, Yan was coming back looking like a true champion. It was very unfortunate. Now, co-main event, or do you want to go back and forth on our thoughts with each fight? I guess we should do that. Huh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Your thoughts on Sterling?
Yeah, I mean, come on, man. Like, I still picked it to be my fight of the night for that card. which probably doesn't speak too well to the rest of the card, main card wise. But it was a great fight, and it's such a shame that that's the way it ended. And all the fallout from it's been really messy. You know, there's accusations of cheating on Aljo's part, or I don't know if cheating's the right word. Playing it up.
Yeah.
You know, not really being as hurt as he said he was.
And then he's turned into a heel.
And now he's got neck surgery, so that fight, there's probably going to be an interim belt brought in. Very messy for a division that's so stacked. It's just unfortunate,
and it was on fire.
It's just unfortunate that we're being introduced to interim champion, things like that. When, man, it's just, if the fight had just, it all really is Jan's fault. He's the one that threw the knee, but man, you hate to see it go that way.
Yeah.
As for the co-main event, I mean, was it ever any doubt?
That's true.
She's the GOAT.
She's the GOAT.
Megan Anderson, good, but
not good enough.
There's levels.
Yeah.
Hit Amanda
2 times.
Technically twice.
Yeah.
Amanda just destroyed her.
Yeah, and then locked her in that triangle armbar. I mean, it destroyed her on the feet, rocked her with the right hand.
She's just so fun to watch. The ways that she finds to kind of put these people out, or
she's
sometimes when their opponents do go all 5 rounds, it's so
shocking,
exciting to watch, like Felicia Spencer.
Yeah.
But here, Megan was an opponent that I thought could hang in there for 5 rounds.
And had shown the one-punch power, has shown dangerous from the back, and just didn't have a chance. Wasn't close. Mm-hmm. And we're at the point now with Amanda where it's just, we feel privileged to watch her. That's the point where we're at. It's really like Tyson-esque from boxing back in the day. It's crazy. She's approaching the Demetrius Johnson numbers, the Anderson Silva numbers, the John Jones numbers. It's mind-boggling. She's finishing fights. Her resume is untouchable in women's mixed martial arts, and she's only going to keep going. And now she's booked to freaking defend her other title later this year. So she's truly special.
Agreed. And then the main event.
Is this the lone champ fight of all 7 of these cards?
No. McGregor Alvarez.
Yes. True.
Yeah. So, besides that, though, I'm pretty sure the rest of them are. And, yeah, it's very interesting, right? Blachowicz came out of nowhere, won the light heavyweight belt. Nobody really thought he would.
Mm-hmm.
Put here against, people are saying, the next coming of Anderson Silva, the next great in the UFC kind of deal. He's really being molded into being like a top 10 level fighter.
He was undefeated.
Yeah. And, much of the talk going in was that, Blachowicz just wasn't going to be able to hang with the speed of Izzy, with the technique of Izzy. That kickboxing is just another level.
And he did that and then some.
Yeah, he did that. Commentary might not have made you believe that.
Yeah, that's very true.
But not only did Blachowicz out-wrestle and showed the holes in Izzy's kind of wrestling defense, but also kind of went tit for tat with him in the striking.
It was very competitive, yeah.
Early on, Izzy definitely had his way with it a little bit. Blachowicz very much reacting to every feint that Izzy threw. But I think once
started getting a feel for it.
Once Blachowicz felt Izzy's power and was like, oh, I can take that, then I think he just got more comfortable.
And I think it was the opposite, to where Izzy started feeling 205 power. He's like, oh, okay. This guy doesn't hit like 185ers. So
yeah.
And Jan Blachowicz and still defends the title.
Overall, not that great of a fight, though, if I'm being honest. It's, it's not bad. Like, I think you even said it was your fight of the night. It's, the later rounds, it gets... Blachowicz did what he had to do to win. He took the fight to the ground, exposed a weakness in Izzy's game, but it's just not the most exciting to watch. He just kind of plods, lays on him. It is what it is.
Right.
First couple rounds were a little bit better, but overall, even with the shitty ending, I'm still saying that Jan Sterling was the better fight overall. And maybe that's kind of a testament for these 3 fights. You do get the exciting finish in the co-main event, but overall, probably not one of the better 3 title fight cards.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Mm-hmm. So now we're going to back up to UFC 251.
July 2020, the first pay-per-view back in Fight Island, I should say. The first event of Fight Island. Shooey, it was a banger.
July 12th, 2020 in Abu Dhabi, Fight Island, the debut of it. we've talked about this card a decent amount at this point, but we got 3 title fights again, like obviously. Starting with the main event, welterweight title on the line, Kamaru Usman going up against Jorge Masvidal. Took the fight on 6 days' notice. That fight's very relevant.
Yes, very.
Because it's being run back
on another 3-fight title
this Saturday.
Yep.
Co-main event, a rematch, featherweight belt, Alexander Volkanovski looking to get his first title defense over Max Holloway, who he had taken the belt from in another 3 title fight card.
Yeah.
That we will talk about. And then we had a vacant belt. Henry Cejudo vacates the bantamweight belt after beating Dominic Cruz at UFC 249. Petr Yan, Jose Aldo are plucked here to battle it out. Very odd matchup. This is really where Jan Sterling should have happened.
That's
or
true.
Jan Sandhagen, depending on...
Or Jan anyone else.
Sterling had beat Sandhagen the month prior, UFC 250. So it should have been, if Sterling could have went...
Turned around,
should have been Jan Sterling here. What were your thoughts, though, on the Jan Aldo fight? Petr Yan did get the TKO.
Insanely competitive to start.
Awesome fight, I thought.
Awesome fight, but man, the late rounds... Jan.
Kind of brutal to watch.
Ooh, man.
Hard to watch a little bit.
Let's be honest, probably not the best stoppage. Could have been stopped sooner.
Oh, yeah.
It should have really never went into that 5th round. I mean, he beat Jose into a bloody pulp. And it just sucked even more to see because it was like, Jose shouldn't have even been in this fight, but they put him into it, and then he just gets punished for it. And Jan really showed how dominant he was. That was kind of his coming out party because he was just a silent assassin. There wasn't much known about him.
Jan?
Yeah, just worked his way up to the rankings. All of a sudden, he's fighting for a title against a legend.
I mean, UFC 2, actually, on that 245 card, which, again, we're going to get to, he was on the undercard there where he knocked out Uriah Faber.
That was brutal.
Brutalized him.
Brutal. 2 legends in a row.
And then Aldo here, who most everybody was like, why is this guy fighting for the title?
Yeah.
We know how great Aldo is, legendary, fighter, one of the best featherweights of all time. Why was he fighting for the bantamweight belt? Mm-hmm. Coming off a loss in his debut in the division to Marlon Moraes. I don't care what your thoughts are on that fight, but he still technically lost.
Yep.
And then he's put in this title fight with Petr Yan. And really, Petr Yan, you could argue, hadn't really earned it yet.
Yeah, I mean, especially considering his most recent fight prior was against Uriah Faber.
I mean, if you really wanted to go off of merit, Marlon Moraes probably should have been in there somewhere at the time.
Yeah.
And Aljamain Sterling. But Petr Yan, I get it. He ends up winning the fight, and he's looked really good since. So, I mean...
Straight killer.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of look back and put those kind of glasses on and look at it from a lens of that time.
Yeah.
But that was kind of my thoughts at the time was like, why is it Marlon Moraes in this fight? I don't care. Like, I thought he won against Aldo personally, but a lot of people didn't, including the boss, and that's why.
And that's why he got the title fight,
But I thought this was a great fight. Aldo gets hurt early with a liver shot, I believe.
Yeah.
Bounces back though, stays in the fight, but then Jan just too much.
4-5 was bad.
Jan was just too much, but it was still a great fight. Now let's get into the co-main event. I'm going to let you start.
The rematch, Volkanovski Holloway 2. He took the crown from Holloway after Max had a 13-fight win streak at 145 pounds with multiple title defenses. And, I mean, as close of a fight as you're going to have in terms of scoring. Back and forth, just a striking, very technical battle. Max had his moments in round 1 and 2 where he knocked Volk down in both rounds. Mm-hmm. Round 3 being the round. And it usually is that way in these five-round title fights that are razor-thin
decisions.
I rewatched Nunes-Shevchenko 2 last night. It was the same way, that third round. And it was the case for this one. That third round is the deciding factor. Flip a coin, and that's who wins it, Rounds 4 and 5, while still competitive, you lean toward Volk.
So let me ask you something then. Because you put it in good terms right there. Razor-thin, very close. But why is everybody, including me and you, so stuck on Holloway being the winner of this fight? If it's as close as you say it is, and as I agree that it is.
I think it's because everyone loves Max Holloway.
But see, to me, that's not fair. That's
not
fair to
because
Volk.
No one should hate Volkanovski. He's an incredible fighter, an incredible person. That's why I'm so excited for him to be on Tough. But I don't know, man. It's weird.
To
It's
me, I
something
remember
that
the fight.
MMA
I remember
community-
the fight being very close. Truthfully, haven't watched it since.
That's another fight I need to go back and watch.
Yet, everybody was so angry.
Yeah.
You were so
Well,
angry.
you know what I think? I think a lot of people, at least in the immediate aftermath, thought or were so mad was because a lot of people scored the first fight even that was for Max. Now that I think is a clear
Wait, really?
decision win. I think that's why a lot of people were still mad. I've seen a lot of people that are still upset about the first fight.
I thought the first fight was clearly a Volkanovski 4-1. But
Yeah, and I think that was still, I don't know, just clear in people's heads.
I'll tell you what I think.
Again, being Max.
What I think this could be a result of is so Max had lost his belt to Volk, gets this rematch here. No matter how close you thought it was, if you scored it for Max and then he loses, you go, oh shit, he's now lost twice.
Yeah.
To Volkanovski. How's he ever going to get another shot?
Right.
That could be a case where it's like people just not wanting to give up.
They didn't know
Max.
what was next for Max. Yeah.
I don't know. Because I remember thinking it was really close, but I also remember being like pissed that I thought the judges got it wrong.
Yeah.
But usually I don't get upset when there's been some egregious,
Yeah.
Chris,
this was not
Chris
a
Lee,
robbery.
Chris Lee with even though RDA won the fight,
Yeah.
he scored it for Paul Felder, didn't he?
Yeah, 3-2 Paul Felder. Paul didn't win a round. Paul didn't win a minute of that fight.
So, you look at something like that, and I get pissed about that.
Yeah.
But when you have these really close fights that could go either way, I tend to just be kind of like, oh, okay, that's not how I scored it, but fair play. This fight, though, as close as it was, I was still a little bit more like, come on, man. I'm like, you guys just kind of fucked over Max Holloway.
Yeah. I don't know.
The fight itself, though, it was cool. It was good.
Yeah. A very technical kickboxing
Very,
match.
very technical.
Yeah.
Best
As
moments.
expected out of
Rounds.
Holloway.
Well, actually, probably another reason more people were upset is because if you go by damage,
The two knockdowns were crucial. Yeah. Volk never had a moment like that.
Never had that.
And
Even
Max
though
had two.
that's not how MMA scoring is.
round by
or
round.
boxing. It's the same scoring. People got to get that out of their heads.
Yeah.
Overall, though, the best moments of this fight are in the first two rounds when Holloway does drop Volk multiple times.
Yeah.
As the fight goes on, it kind of basically by halfway through round 3, I just knew this fight was going to a decision.
Yeah.
I think that's why it just isn't as interesting when you get later in, because it's like, all right, we're going to the judges' scorecards.
It's odd. Historically, Max gets better as the fight goes on. So to see him lose 4 and 5 was strange. And then, of course, we know the fight that he bounces back with against Cater. He put on one of the best performances in UFC history.
Yeah.
So it was a very strange two-fight kind of just outlier. I don't want to say an outlier because, again, Volkanovski's an incredible fighter. This guy hasn't lost since his debut.
It's got to speak to that.
Volkanovski is that good.
You know?
So, phew. Main event, I guess.
Main event. It's the first time Kamaru Usman fought Jorge Masvidal. Usman retains.
You guys are going to be hearing a lot about this week.
Oh, man. Where to begin with this one? Shout out to Jorge for taking the fight 6 days notice, right?
Shout out to Kamaru
for
agreeing to take the fight.
Good point. So you got these guys coming in 6 days notice to fight each other.
Highly anticipated.
But
was supposed to be Usman Burns.
Right. Burns drops out 6 days out, obviously, due to COVID. In steps Jorge Masvidal, who is, at this point, at UFC 251, is the biggest star in the UFC outside of Conor McGregor.
Yeah, and Conor wasn't active then, so technically I'll say he was.
Well,
he fought in January, but
But in his star power, definitely made this event a big success.
1.3 million buys.
The fight itself, though.
Hey, he looked good in round 1.
Yeah, early on though, Masvidal.
The threat was real.
Usman looked a little shooken.
The body kicks that Jorge was landing.
Jorge came right out and
aggressive.
When you're a striker and you're going up against a wrestler, you're immediately told to be a little bit more conservative with your leg kicks because wrestlers can easily just grab it, take you down. So leg kicks tend to be neutralized when you're going up against a wrestler.
Masvidal said, eh.
Masvidal said, I'm going to throw him harder.
It looked like he was trying to kick a tree down.
Yeah, and truthfully, I think he was hurting.
Oh, they were hurting.
Usman was feeling him.
Yeah.
But
Once
as
his
I
ass,
just said,
once his
Usman
ass hit the
once
canvas,
again grabs the leg on one of them, gets him down.
and then copy and paste.
And as the fight goes on, it's just...
Toe stomps, clinch work.
Yeah,
ground.
This fight really hurt Usman for a while, too, in the eyes of fans. I mean, I remember how mad everybody was at the end of this. We were all kind
People were just angry after this.
We were all kind of stubborn after this event because Max Holloway, everybody thought he was robbed. And then you get the main event. And I don't even think it was because Jorge didn't win. It was just a boring fight.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
Well, it was such a massive fight. Obviously, on 6 days' notice, it played out completely different. That's the whole point of the rematch, I guess, quote unquote, that we're going to see this weekend. But so many people wanted to see this for so long, yet the only time we got to see it was on 6 days' notice. Both guys weren't prepared for each other. We saw the result. So,
yeah,
this weekend will give us a better indicator.
Yeah, but this fight is,
yeah,
not good. Right?
Let's go back again.
Well, let's just say UFC 251 for all the hype, for all the shine, because it is the debut of Fight Island. When you really look at it, like these 3 title fights, I mean, they're fine.
Yeah.
Aldo Jan's a good fight.
Yeah.
But it goes on too long.
Yeah.
Volkanovski Holloway's a fine.
If you like technical striking.
Yeah, it's a good fight, but also just gets a little repetitive.
Yeah.
Usman Masvidal just, don't need to see that ever again.
But we are.
So, like, once again, we're kind of like, these 3 title fight cards so far not really delivering. Well, I think it's going to turn around here soon.
Yeah. And speaking of the king of 3 title fight cards, UFC 245 headlined by Kamaru Usman in his first title defense.
Yeah, interesting. This is really interesting going reverse order because I'm, like, trying to, like, switch my brain. So UFC 245 happened on December 14th, 2019 at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yeah.
Headlined by, as you mentioned, Kamaru Usman, who is now the welterweight champion at this point. Pretty fresh. He won the belt in like March, I want to say, of 2019.
March of that year.
His first title defense had been against Colby Covington, blood rivals.
The fight that everybody wanted.
Co-main event, Max Holloway.
Oh, and who?
The best featherweight of all time. Looking to add another feather in the cap.
Yeah.
Against the former men's rugby player, Alexander Volkanovski.
Yeah, 214-pound rugby
That fight
player.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, it does. Huh.
And women's bantamweight.
Wait. The queen.
Amanda Nunes looking to defend against the inaugural UFC
True.
women's featherweight champion, Jermaine Durandamy.
But this one happened at bantamweight.
This one did happen at bantamweight. So, starting with Amanda GDR. GDR at
We
least
saw Amanda get threatened.
This feels very similar to what we just talked about with Usman Masvidal.
Yeah.
But maybe even more so for GDR.
Yeah.
Like, GDR at least showed that she could hang with Nunes on the feet.
It was like one of the few times we've seen Amanda get threatened.
Honestly, GDR is probably a more she's probably got more of a pedigree in her striking than Nunes does.
Oh, she has more pedigree than a lot of the women.
Well,
in
because
the UFC.
you look at just the amount that woman has accomplished, especially when it comes to her striking, is just
world class.
Whew. And she's got the power to back it up.
Yes, she does.
So you saw Amanda definitely.
She had a game plan and stuck to it, huh?
Yeah. So Amanda completely turned into a wrestler, turned into Habib.
Yeah, she did.
And it was really. I thought it was fun to watch. I've went back and watched it since. Again, not the most exciting fight in the world.
Shows how good she is everywhere.
But this is how I get with Amanda fights. I just amazed at how she does it.
Yep.
This is not a woman who is the best wrestler in the world. She doesn't have like a wrestling background necessarily, but here she is taking down the number 1 contender in her division like it's nothing.
She has
and
an
GDR,
answer for
man,
everything.
That takedown defense is frustrating to watch.
Yeah, it was.
It just never really able to just really...
She was not prepared for all that wrestling.
No.
It showed. And again, Amanda just has answers for every situation. It's why she's the GOAT and why she has so many records and is going to keep breaking records more than likely.
Mm-hmm. So then you get to the co-main event, and we've already kind of talked about this matchup, but it was the first time it happened. Volkanovski
This shit was heartbreaking.
defeats Max Holloway for his title. You know why I think it's so heartbreaking? Because you couldn't take anything away from Volkanovski on that night.
You know what I just thought about? Sorry, before we get more into the fight. Back to your question about the whole Holloway thing at 251.
Yeah.
If you think about it, Max lost the belt at 245, like we're about to talk about. He lost to Volk at 251. He had also lost in his quest to become the lightweight champion, so he had lost 3 of his last 4 fights after 251.
I'm glad you said 3 of his last 4.
That
Frankie
me.
Edgar.
Yeah, he did defend against Frankie.
But
So that was just another piece. I just thought about that.
I mean, we were wondering. I remember I picked Calvin Kattar to win.
Yeah.
I said
He was just in a weird place.
I said maybe the best days of Max are a little behind him.
And then he had the best performance ever.
Didn't just shut me up.
So anyway, so 245.
Yeah, so Max Holloway had looked unbeatable really at this division. You look at the performance against Brian Ortega, even Frankie Edgar, who nobody really thought Edgar should be in that position, but still won the fight. But yeah, he did lose to Dustin Poirier, and that was a fight I thought Max was going to win.
That was such a great fight.
It was a good fight. So then Max, again, goes back down, beats Frankie. And then he gets this fight.
This is similar to the second fight, but more swayed toward Volkanovski's success.
To me, I had it 4-1 Volkanovski.
And holy moly leg kicks.
That's
why, literally why he won the fight.
I mean,
don't get me wrong. He landed.
Talk about a game plan.
Shoo. We had never seen it against Max.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird how in the last couple of years, like something that's so simple in MMA, like a leg kick, like something that's just a day one, or you can visualize it. When you think of striking in MMA, you don't think of just punches. You think of kicks as well. Yet, we've seen in these fights time and time again, these high-profile title fights or just high-profile fights in general, where these simple leg kicks, it's like the other guy's just not ready for it.
Yeah.
This fight, McGregor, Poirier too with the calf kicks.
They're coming even more prominent now.
It's just this is like a kind of an outlier.
These were like the old-fashioned leg kicks.
Yeah.
I mean, he landed calf kicks as well, but he was going to the thigh. I mean, inside leg kicks, outside leg kicks.
It's just something, but yet Max was
no answers.
His legs were getting beat up.
Yeah, the fact that he even went, I know he was hurting the next day, but the fact that he was even walking after 5 rounds is crazy.
And it was just the end of an era in a lot of ways. Like, I never really was sure if Volkanovski was ever going to really be that guy.
And now,
like a title holder.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just you look at his story; it's so interesting.
Yeah, and such a humble person, genuine human.
I mean, you look at the history of being the guy that played men's rugby at over 200 pounds.
Crazy.
He
fought all the way down to featherweight. I mean, this guy fought at like light heavyweight in New Zealand, middleweight, welterweight, all the way down.
For being a guy that started MMA so late in life, I just thought for sure, like, this guy's good, but I don't know if he'll ever really be great.
And he's world class.
World class.
With one loss.
Put on a performance of his life against Max here.
Has beat the best featherweight ever twice.
Yep. Whether you like it or not, people, whether we like it or not, he's beat him twice.
And now he's about to be the coach of the rebranded Ultimate Fighter.
With
Brian Ortega.
So,
crazy.
A great matchup there. Yeah.
And then.
I thought it was a good fight, though.
Oh, it was a good fight, yeah, for sure.
But, main event.
The second best fight of the year in 2019.
Woo! Wow. Usman.
Crazy to say Covington. This was the second best.
Yeah, I mean, because Adesanya Gastelum might have something to say about that. But Kamaru Usman, Colby Covington,
did it deliver? It over-delivered. No one expected this. No one.
5-round war.
People thought we were just going to see a bunch of grappling exchanges.
I remember being like, I don't care about this fight. I was like, man, I mean, like, it was the rightful number 1 and 2. So in that way, I was like, okay. Like, I'm glad this matchup's being made, but I'm like, man, this fight's going to be boring as shit. I said, these two guys, I'm like, if I want to go to bed, I'm going to watch Kamaru Usman or Colby Covington fight.
This was the fight that made you stay up till 4 a.m. in reverse.
Yeah, but that was just me being stupid back then. These guys are fantastic fighters.
No one thought that two grapplers were going to go tit for tat, shot for shot.
This fight's really changed a lot in how I view MMA fights or how I break them down. To see two guys that are so specialized in an aspect of MMA, wrestling, for both of them, to basically cancel each other out and to just have a battle of the areas where they're not as...
It turned into a battle of wills.
Really it did. The areas where they're not as highly regarded in, it's just like, okay, who's better? Who's got the more power? Who's going to land a perfect shot? Because really, truthfully, the fight's a little sloppy. But that's because you got two guys that aren't natural strikers.
Yeah, and they had a boxing match.
Yeah, but it's
this wasn't even a kickboxing match.
But it's so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Usman breaks Colby's jaw.
Finishes him in the
fifth round. The way he finished him, I mean...
With 50 seconds left.
Like, just... It felt like it was like a Rocky movie.
Yeah, it was crazy. What a fight, man.
And it was a fight that I don't know how it would have went if it went to the judges' scorecards, but I had the fight scored for Colby at that point.
Imagine if it would have. Holy.
So, what a fight.
That's got to be one of the biggest what-ifs in MMA history right there.
Yeah.
What a fight.
So
I mean, how much more can you even say about that fight?
And you know what's weird is, even coming off that fight, it's like Usman still didn't get the respect for a long time. Yeah. Really, just now.
The poor guy's just now getting it after beating Burns.
We're starting to hear him getting more respect. This is a fight that happened 2 years ago.
And you saw how pissed he was when he beat Burns recently. Like, put some respect on my name.
Because we just talked about 251. That would be his next title defense. And everybody's like, oh, he's a boring fighter. Bitch, 6 months ago, he had a fight of the year. Like, come on.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's just an interesting MMA community. And don't be wrong, like, the 30% Kamaru, that was a different version. But this guy, ever since then, has turned into a different fucking beast.
This definitely feels like one of the better 3 title fight cards.
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to be honest, that poster is so sick. I know not everybody can see this, but it's like kind of an old school like boxing poster almost.
A little bit.
That's sick.
Yeah, I like it.
So that's 245.
That's 245.
Now we take a little gap.
Now it's a gap, like we talked about. So yeah, 259, 251, 245.
That's and about to have 261.
Yeah. But then if you go to the one before that...
It's been a bit.
UFC 217.
In New York City.
November 4th, 2017. At
the
Madison Square Garden in New York City, New York.
This is the best 3 title fight card.
Oh, it's the best one. And it's one of the best cards in UFC history.
This is awesome, man. Absolutely insane.
And the reason why it's one of the best cards of all time is for the 3 title fights.
History.
So this is going to be fun.
History.
Let's just... Okay, let me just...
I think you just tell them what happened.
All 3 title fights.
And
all
new.
3 and new.
Crazy.
Come on, man.
Crazy.
That's... If that's ever replicated...
We're in for a treat.
Yeah. So, main event.
Holy.
Middleweight belt.
Who?
Michael Bisping.
Who? GSP?
Versus the returning George St. Pierre.
At middleweight?
Co-main event. Bantamweight. Bad Blood.
Shit.
Cody Garbrandt. Looking
Ohio
to get
boy.
his first title defense. He was fighting for his boys.
Yeah.
Fighting for Uriah and the boys.
Yeah.
Against TJ Dillashaw, the snake in the grass.
Yeah.
And then women's strawweight, Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
Thug Rose.
Joanna looking to take the next step and possibly becoming the best women's fighter of all time. Going up against a little Rose Namajunas.
The birth of that legendary call by Daniel Cormier.
So yeah, let's just start. Thug Rose TKO's Joanna in the first round.
You talk about shocking the world.
Nobody thought Rose had a chance.
No one thought Rose had a chance.
Well,
this was when Joanna was just...
Look at the stare down before the fight. Rose is doing the
Lord's Prayer while Joanna's up in her face.
Oh, my God. You just go, this poor girl.
Oh, man.
This poor girl.
And Joanna had gotten so good at that mental fortitude against people, man. Just getting into their heads and beating them. She was the female version of what Conor used to do, really. That's what she was. She was so intense. It was just sickening. And to see what Rose came out and did... Wow.
I mean, just...
Starched her.
Yeah, really
Starched
she
her.
did.
I mean, knocked her out 3 minutes into the first round. Dropped her once prior before that. And then literally beat her to where Joanna tapped from strikes.
Yeah, she did.
It was crazy.
It's so reminiscent of like GSP losing to Matt Serra.
Yeah.
Tapping the strikes. You're like, what?
That's how it felt. That's how big Joanna was too.
Think about Rose beating Joanna at her game, though. Like, I mean...
Yeah, we're talking about a world-class Muay Thai champion. This was she had 6 title defenses. This was going to be her 7th.
And
That's
Rose's
the most
professional record,
was
she
the
had
most.
less than 15 professional fights at this point.
She still does.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
She's around like 10.
She was still so young at this point and still is now. And to do what she did to Joanna and then beat her again in the rematch, which again, that's not part of this episode, but I just had to say it. She beat Joanna twice. So when Rose did this, like 217, unbelievable, jaw dropping. No one saw it coming.
Mm-hmm.
Thug Rose.
Yeah,
Thug Rose.
Yeah, one of the most iconic calls from a commentator.
And it was the same thing over and over. But pure
Rose.
shock.
Yeah.
That's what everybody was feeling. It was crazy. And
So
to see that in MSG.
So I guarantee everybody's watching that and they go, man, this cannot be topped.
Yeah. Well,
got 2 more.
yeah.
Cody Garbrandt. Hey, he's a friend of the podcast.
I mean, no shit. We got pictures with him, autographs, everything.
He's Ohio boy.
He's our
We're
boy.
Ohio boys. We're boys.
Cody.
He had won the belt from Mr. Dominic Cruz.
And one of the greatest title fight victories you ever see.
So here, he's placed with TJ Dillashaw. A lot of bad blood there.
Blood. Yeah.
I mean, this was my main event going into this.
Yeah.
Because I was a big Cody fan. I was really into the rivalry.
Massive right now, yeah.
And
what a slugfest.
this
So
was
Cody,
my fight of the night.
Hey, you give that first round 5-10 more seconds, Cody's probably in still.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah, he dropped.
It's crazy.
Didn't he
Hurt
drop
TJ bad at
Didn't
the
he
end of the
drop
first.
him?
Dropped him.
Yeah.
Went in for the ground and pound and everything, and the round ends. Then
Gets up, flips him off.
we saw the overzealous Cody. The birth of overzealous Cody.
The birth of seeing red.
3 straight just weird performances from Cody where he just stands and bangs, doesn't protect his chin. Granted, he would still land occasionally, but a guy as precise of a striker as TJ, can't just be slinging like that. And it showed.
And TJ drops him, and then a very iconic image of Cody who's like seeing stars.
Oh, and he gets up and yells in his face. That picture's nuts.
Yeah. Man.
That was heartbreaking for us.
As fans of Cody, it was heartbreaking. But what a comeback from TJ. What a performance from TJ. Made him a 2-time champion.
Yeah.
And he would hold the belt until he popped for Lance Armstrong. That's shit. So.
Yes, true.
But this was my fight of the night. Like, this fight was fucking bonkers.
And then the what the fuck fight of the year.
The main event, though, was just as good. I mean...
The one of the greatest fighters of all time returning up a weight class against who? Michael Bisping? The guy that had the most fights in UFC history to earn a title shot?
Yeah,
and then defended against Dan Henderson, who was ranked 13th?
The most unlikely champion in UFC history, Michael Bisping.
This is one of the most unlikely fights ever made in UFC history.
And it's fantastic.
Fantastic fight.
GSP comes in looking a little like ring rust, maybe.
Michael Bisping called him impregnated by aliens.
Well, I ain't talking.
Oh,
like
sorry.
that.
I just had to throw some Bisping fun in there.
it's funny, but I mean more like from a ring rust. Like he just looked.
Bisping looked good.
Yeah, like early on, Bisping was controlling this
and he
fight.
hurt GSP and had him bloodied up and everything.
Yeah, but
GSP
is one of the best of all time. Not that Bisping isn't, but GSP might be the best fighter. He is my number 1 fighter of all time.
And then GSP rocks Bisping, hurts him, drops him to the ground, pounces on him for the rear naked, puts him to sleep with the submission in round 3.
GSP in his return fight, becoming a 2-division world champion.
And then never defended that belt and vacated it. The exact opposite that Dana said he wanted him to do, but that's okay because he's a GOAT, so we respect
literally, I'm pretty sure Dana said he was putting it in the contract to where George had to defend, but...
And he said, nah.
He had
yeah, that's true. He did have like some
very serious,
with his intestines,
intestinal problem. Yeah. Less said about afterwards, the better. But
damn, the fight was awesome. Finished it with 37 seconds left in that 3rd round, too.
Was that really how much time was left?
Yeah, 37 seconds.
These 3 title fights, this is the best it's literally one of the best cards of all time.
It's crazy.
But the 3 title fights themselves, this is so iconic.
Yeah, I mean,
this is one of the reasons we get even more excited for 3 title fight cards
because
outside.
Of the possibility to rival this.
It has to be. Because
will it ever happen? I don't know.
3 title fights in itself is like, it's happened, Yeah, they're big deals, but like you look at like UFC 214, which happened after 205 when they went to New York, and we're going to talk about it, but people were only caring about the main event there. Look at the poster. Cormier versus Jones 2.
Yeah.
This fight, they said, nah,
Everybody. We're putting all of you on.
Yeah, Bisping GSP might look huge, but that's different. But no, they're like everybody's on there. And every fight delivered. So now look at that. Afterwards, all three of those. Everybody's on there.
And this weekend's has everybody on it.
Yep. Hell, even 251 even put Rose and...
Yeah, they put 4 fights.
They put Rose and Jessica on there.
I'm looking for Paige Van Zandt and Hebos very tiny in the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, this fight it's really the blueprint for what you want to see out of multi-title fight.
Yeah, I mean, you all know that we do classic pay-per-view reviews, so you're going to hear very in-depth details, probably about every single one of these at some point way down the line. But title fight-wise, especially, because that's what we're focusing on, unbelievable. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. Not only did we get 3 new champions, all 3 via finish, in great fights.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well said.
217.
We're going to back up just a couple months. UFC 214. Happening July 29th, 2017 at the Honda Center in Anaheim, California.
The event that got moved. Right?
No, you're thinking of 232.
Oh, 232 got moved. Yeah.
It's easy to think that because
Is that bad?
Because Mr. John Jones.
I'm sorry.
The list piles up for that man, doesn't it?
There's a lot of cards.
So, our main event was for the light heavyweight title. Daniel Cormier looking to avenge his only professional loss to John Jones at the time.
Yep.
Co-main event, welterweight Tyron Woodley.
Oh.
Finally gets... I'm trying to hype this fight up, but Tyron Woodley going up against the rightful contender, Damian Maia.
And Tyron Woodley went 23-23, baby.
Well, we ain't got there yet. And the women's featherweight title, it was up for grabs.
And the GOAT women's fighter at the time,
Chris Cyborg, going up against Tanya Evinger.
Former Invicta champ.
Mm-hmm. We'll start with Cyborg Evinger.
I mean, a beatdown for 3 rounds.
Oh, my God.
Hey, but shout out to Tanya. She's as tough as they come. And the fact that she even went 3 rounds in that fight is unreal. But Cyborg gets the TKO.
I mean, Tanya Evinger is a bantamweight who was fighting at featherweight. Yeah. I mean, it was...
And this is like a legit fighter, especially how good she was in Invicta, but it just showed the levels that Cyborg was at that time, especially at 145.
Well, this was a belt that was vacant because Jermaine Durandamy beat Holly Holm at UFC 208. Less said about that fight, the better.
It's just weird.
Afterwards, Jermaine Durandamy basically says, I'm not going to fight Cyborg. Even though this whole division...
was built for Cyborg.
Yeah, and she... so she gets stripped.
Yeah, it was...
one of the quickest strippings of a belt you'll ever see.
Yeah, it was weird.
So now you got here Cyborg and Evinger fighting for a vacant belt.
Yeah.
And Cyborg is rightfully placed at the top. Yeah. And she would stay there until 232, where she would get... decimated by the GOAT.
And that's the card that got moved to California.
That is, that's the one. So then this co-main event.
All right. Well, okay. So the 23 for 23 thing. Damian Maia shot in for 23 takedowns. Tyron Woodley stuffed and sprawled and defended all 23 of them. Quite incredible numbers. And outside of that, not much happened.
This fight sucks. I'm just going to say it. This fight's ass.
And we're nice for the most time on here. Because we respect these guys.
Yeah, I mean, this fight's brutal. It's so hard to watch.
It was weird. This was like the definition of doing what you had to do to win.
Here's the shame of it.
Woodley got
this is
shit
the
on
fight
for this.
that we wanted Damian Maia to get a title fight.
Yeah, it was a feel-good story.
But yet, once he got it, we're like, wait, he's fighting Woodley? Oh, that's not going to go well.
Yeah.
That was kind of the thought. I was like, ooh.
Woodley was destroying people then.
Well, because Woodley starched Robbie Lawler to win the belt.
Yeah.
Then he had an awesome fight that went to a draw with Stephen Thompson.
Second fight?
They rematch. Not a great fight, but Woodley retains. So then here, this fight. This is kind of the start. This and the fight before it.
Not the best 2 fights period.
Yeah, it's where people were kind of like...
Dana,
Tyron,
too, wasn't
shit.
big on it. Yeah.
Yeah, Dana had a lot to say about this fight afterwards.
Luckily for Tyron, he bounced back huge against Till. But yeah, this fight wasn't great.
It was a tough one, and it's not all his fault.
Yeah, true.
There's 2 guys in there, but Damian Maia was trying, and we knew
he couldn't compete on the feet with Woodley, man.
And Woodley just wasn't throwing at all.
Yeah. So that's that fight. Main event.
So we get the rematch. Cormier Jones. This was the best fight of the main card, I thought.
Crazy Cormier was winning this fight.
Cormier was arguably winning. It was a good fight, solid fight. It looked like it was starting to heat up.
DC looked good, man. In this
it was
fight.
starting to kind of hit starting to get
peak.
to a crescendo.
Yeah.
And then out of nowhere, Jones
Kakoosh!
lands the high kick. And DC starts,
Snot went
and
flying.
DC's left side starts sagging. And you're like, oh no.
He went down, man.
Or I should say his right side.
And, man, I mean, John had that killer instinct on this, didn't he? He went in and just pounded Daniel.
Chased him. Daniel's trying to run away, and he just falls on his face.
It was bad. That head kick was nasty. I remember watching that and just being like, holy shit.
And it took the wind out of us
He
a
just
little bit.
kicked the head off of his shoulder.
Because DC looked so good.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, John has finished plenty of fights. But this one was brutal. And, of course, we get an and still. But there's a little bit of an asterisk.
Yeah, there is a little bit of an asterisk. That asterisk is you can't do steroids.
Yep. John Jones pops again for PEDs.
This was the second time at this point.
Yeah, gets stripped of the title.
So literally after he has this triumphant return, all the hype around us, like I said, this fight was really promoted as a one-fight card.
Yeah.
Everything, do you remember the hype videos of Jones being like, I have to get my life back? And
Oh, this was sick. The hype was
the
unreal.
The videos were amazing. Because there's legitimate
These
hatred.
guys hate each other competitively.
And then Jones wins, and he says that Cormier is an amazing champion and father.
Yeah, it was like, it all was like, oh.
It felt like
this
the
is
end
good.
of the end. It was like, okay,
John Jones turned the page, the rivalry.
and not even a week
48
later,
hours, I think, or something.
Not even a week later, that man pops for PEDs again, stripped Daniel Cormier's champion again.
And fights for the title like January of that year. Or the next year.
Well, I'm just saying,
Volkan.
Daniel Cormier's instilled as champion
And
again.
to this day says he hated that. He said, I lost the belt. I had to fight to earn it back. I didn't just get it given back.
Okay, but
to
he
me."
did.
He did, but stand up guy.
I'm just saying, like, man, how deflating that is. And
And
overall, because of that, it kind of makes this card feel pointless. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the main event's great.
But the ultimate result just really hinders it.
I mean, it really
And it
does.
was a great fight, too, back and forth.
It was a great fight. One of the best promoted fights I've ever seen the UFC
it was
do.
very good.
But then you just... it takes the wind out of you with what follows. And because of that, it's got to be probably not necessarily the bottom of 3 title fight cards.
It's definitely the one we least talked about on this episode.
It's not my least favorite 3 title fight card, but it's close.
Fair enough.
So now we're going to go back to probably the second best.
The Granddaddy. The one that started a new era. We talked about it on the Reebok episode last week. The very first event in New York City, Madison Square Garden, UFC 205, all around as a promoted event. Holy shit, the promotion videos for this were unbelievable.
November 12th, 2016,
Never
at
forget.
Madison Square Garden.
You talk about this card as a whole.
Me being very new to the sport, this was like, it felt like Christmas. You know? It felt like this new love I had for the sport, and then you have this huge card, this huge milestone, and that they're back in New York.
Yeah.
First time at Madison Square Garden in New York City, and they had a card that really lived up to the hype too. Because
And a guy by the name of Conor McGregor.
well, that's what I was going to get to. That main event, you had champ versus champ.
Yeah, history.
The featherweight champion, Conor McGregor, moving up to fight Eddie Alvarez, the lightweight champion. Co-main event, Tyron Woodley, the newly crowned welterweight champion, looking to make the first defense of his title against Wonder Boy Stephen Thompson. Women's strawweight title.
Fight that gets slept on.
Poland versus Poland.
Yeah, this fight was huge.
Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I just watched this fight last night.
You did?
In preparation for this. And you were totally right.
Right?
This fight is so slept on.
Yes.
Because of, the Rose and Joanna. This fight is fantastic. People, we're just going to go ahead and start with
both of these women were undefeated at the time, both from Poland, both striking technical phenoms, yes, in the striking realm, and they went tit for tat for 5 freaking rounds. Nobody talks about this.
I didn't remember it, but when I watched it, Carolina hurts Joanna multiple times.
Dude, Carolina was so good.
People
forget how good.
She nearly dropped the champion.
Yeah.
And Joanna was unstoppable at this time. And yet, after this fight, we just talked about 217. Joanna still had that aura about her.
Yep.
And
untouchable.
Yet, this is where we first saw the chinks in the armor.
Yep.
It was Carolina Kovalkiewicz.
Thank you.
This fight's fantastic.
Thank you.
But it's not fight of the night.
Because
the following fight, Tyron Woodley, Stephen Thompson,
man.
They fought to a majority draw.
You don't see that often in title fights.
Woo! This fight, to see Stephen Thompson, the nicest guy in the world, but you saw some grit here. You saw some heart.
And if it's not for that heart and grit, he really doesn't even get a draw in this fight.
No,
and if it wasn't for him getting dropped and getting a 10-8 against him, he wins the fight.
Yeah, Woodley, that right hand.
Oh, it's a right hand.
Look, I know now it's kind of made fun of that, Woodley backs up to the fence, throws the right hand.
It made an appearance recently against Luque.
But here...
Oh, boy. It was cooking.
It cooked.
Because right before this is when he dismantled Robbie.
Yeah, and when he hit Stephen Thompson with it, and Thompson just, drops on his back, we were like, oh, shit.
That was late in the fight.
And then, that was third round, I think he did that. Then the fourth round, he hurts him again.
But the fourth round the 10-8? I forget which one was the 10-8. Because clearly the 10-8 is what made this a draw.
But I mean...
Otherwise, Stephen Thompson wins the belt.
Because he won rounds 1, 2, and 5.
Yeah, 5.
That's
which is even crazier.
The fact that he comes back and wins the final round, that's what makes this one of the best fights ever.
Crazy, man.
The fight's amazing. It's the best fight of the card. But if that wasn't enough...
Conor McGregor? Champ?
Conor McGregor...
This was like peak Conor Mania, by the way.
Peak Conor Mania. Literally, it was. He'd finally gotten past Nate Diaz in 202 in one of the best fights of all time.
Yes.
He's headlining the first fight back in New York against Eddie Alvarez, looking to become the first two-weight simultaneous champion.
Isn't this... I don't know why this is weird to me or funny. Isn't it funny that Eddie was the champion? Isn't that just random? I don't know. He's such a slept-on fighter, and maybe that's why. Because this guy went on a tear to win the belt, beat RDA, who was at the time RDA was looked at as unstoppable.
Well, he beat Anthony Pettis.
Him and Conor was going to be a massive fight, should that fight have ever happened.
I think RDA destroyed Anthony Pettis, who was Wheaties box guy.
Yeah.
Everybody thought Anthony Pettis was the next big thing.
And Alvarez starched RDA. Yeah. At the Ultimate Fighter finale that summer. It wasn't even on a pay-per-view. Then the son of a bitch is headlining at MSG with Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
So random.
And the shit talking leading up, man.
Oh, it was beautiful, wasn't it? Eddie held his own, but this
Classics.
was, again...
Hey, Eddie didn't get the worst of it. Jeremy Stevens got the worst of it.
Poor guy. Hasn't been the same since.
He really hasn't. He said, poor guy.
Hey, and Conor McGregor put on the best performance of his entire life.
Oh, it's the best we're ever going to see Conor look.
And this is one of the best title-winning performances ever.
Yeah, I mean, this fight is all Conor. Zero.
When he put his hands behind his back, I got chills. Dude, this guy's on another stratosphere.
I mean, Eddie you could tell Eddie was just
shaking in his boots.
Yeah, I mean, this fight was decided before he.
It may not have looked like it at the press conferences because Eddie was holding his all. Conor was in there like swimwear.
Yeah.
I mean, he really was.
But I mean, what a way to cap it off. You see Conor holding both belts. This is when everybody loved Conor.
This was peak Conor Mania.
And then after this is when people just started to not like him as much.
Right.
But I remember us going crazy when this happened.
I have a photo of this moment.
Yeah, you do.
And I'm not like a Conor stan, but I respect what the guy did, and this was historical.
What a way to cap off.
The first simultaneous champ.
What a way to cap off one of the best 3 title fight cards. The first one they had in a long time.
It's only fitting that the 2 best 3 title fight cards both happened at MSG.
Oh,
it's only fitting.
MSG cards are just...
It's the mecca.
Yeah.
I can't wait till they go back. Because they're going to go balls to the wall when they do it.
Yep. Whew. And...
Ladies and gentlemen, the grand finale of
so
the
y'all
evening.
might have thought...
People are going to be like, huh?
People probably were like, oh, UFC 205 is the first one, huh? Nope.
This paved the way.
UFC 33.
33. Give them a date on this.
Well, titled Victory in Vegas.
I love the title. I love that.
I want to make sure I get this right.
Get it right. Take your time.
I believe this was the first pay-per-view ran by the new owners of the UFC, Zuffa. It was either the first or second.
And it's only right. They just throw a banger on paper.
I believe that is the case. I hate that I don't know that.
Don't fact check him. We try. Okay?
It's the first or second. I think it's the first.
Fair enough.
But this was such a big deal because this was the first UFC card held in the newly established fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. Nevada had just made professional MMA legal in the state.
Yeah, the UFC before this was fighting all over
Can
the
you
damn
believe
place.
that for 8 years this promotion didn't fight in Vegas? They weren't even allowed.
They were fighting on Indian reservations in the middle of Kansas. I mean, they were everywhere. It was crazy.
So this event happened September 28, 2001. That's right.
September
it's like 2 weeks.
28th, 2001.
2 weeks after 9/11.
Crazy. Wow.
At the Mandalay Bay Event Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is the worst 3 title fight card in history. There will never be another card.
Is this the worst card?
It's one of the worst cards in UFC history. Can you believe it, people? There's 3 title fights on this bitch.
We were like, why are they finishing with this one?
It is one of the worst. I tried watching this whole thing.
And you couldn't. It probably took about 5 hours.
It is such shit that I had to take a shower afterwards because I just felt dirty. But let's talk about the fights.
Hey, some big names on the card, to be fair.
Trust me.
Stacked it.
They called it victory in Vegas. This was supposed to be the victory lap.
Low-key, let's start naming cards again.
They literally were like, no, listen. you guys don't understand. This card wasn't to decide if they were victorious or not. They had already crossed the finish line.
Yeah.
This card was the victory lap.
Yeah.
It's shit. Main event. Light heavyweight title. Tito Ortiz.
Tito.
One of the
Huntington Beach bad boy.
Legend.
He's on your freaking, whatchamacallit, Mount Rushmore.
Yes, he is
Crazy.
on my whatchamacallit. Looking to defend against Vladimir Matyushenko.
Yeah.
It was originally supposed to be Vitor Belfort.
Yeah, I just noticed the poster has Vitor.
I did not notice that.
I couldn't find one.
The poster Vitor?
They never made a new one. I don't know.
Well,
Anyways.
just continue on.
Anyways.
So it's Vladimir Matyushenko, not Vitor Belfort.
Way to say that name so seamlessly.
Main event. The lightweight title. Jens Pulver.
The Twitch guy for UFC now.
One of the most underrated fighters in UFC history.
Yeah.
Going up against Dennis Hallman.
Look at that guy's record.
Dennis Hallman, best known for wearing a Speedo in the UFC, I believe.
And then getting cut immediately after.
Yep. And we had the inaugural middleweight title fight. Literally the first middleweight champion was crowned on this night. Dave Manet and Gil Castillo. It's all bad, guys. Guys, I don't even think we can go fight by fight here. But Dave Manet does become the first middleweight champion. So if we ever decide to do a UFC trivia segment on this podcast, you might want to write that one down.
Take your notes, kids.
Because
You're not going to guess
it's Dave Manet.
Dave Manet.
Jens Pulver retains against Dennis Hallman. And Tito Ortiz retains against Vladimir Matyushenko. All 3 of these
Was that
fights,
we're out? Was he on for? I'm just kidding.
all 3 of these fights went to decision. And I'm going to tell you the cherry on top why this event's so bad.
You're so passionate about this, and I love it.
For the people who people who bought this shitty event.
Oh yeah, I forgot about this.
You know, imagine you're sitting at home.
2001, didn't even know what UFC
You got
was.
your family around you, friends, popping some bottles,
Mm-hmm.
eating some popcorn or some pizza.
Wings. Yeah.
You're watching Victory in Vegas. You're
Victory.
like, man, the sport I love has finally made it to the fight capital of the world.
Tito's here. Chuck's here. I know he's not in a title fight, but Chuck Liddell, Matt Serra. We're not getting into the whole card. I realize that, but I just had to mention it because both those fights went to decision as well, which is getting you to know his point that he's about to make.
So you're watching. You're like, man, I'm so excited. This card's stacked. Just have 3 title fights on one card. That's unheard of. Because guess what? It never happened before this.
Yeah.
Matt Serra, Eve Edwards comes on. You go, oh, well.
First fight of the night.
That's the first fight. Matt Serra wins. You're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
Matt Serra wins. Chuck Liddell's coming
The
up.
Iceman.
He beats Murillo Bustamante. You go, man.
Decision, good fight.
Usually Chuck's in better fights than that.
Yeah. We'll go into the title fights
Oh,
though,
we got the very first middleweight champion. Wow, Dave Manet, kind of. Who's Gil Castillo? Oh, okay, Dave Manet, first champion. Okay.
5 rounds.
Jens Pulver and Dennis Hallman come up.
Jens Pulver, big name, huh?
Yep, Pulver retains via unanimous decision. You go,
Oh, another 5 rounds. You're all of a sudden looking at the clock.
You look at the clock and you're like, damn. You're like, I gotta go to church in the morning. Like, what's going on here? You're like, but hey, I got to stay up for Tito.
It's the Huntington Beach bad boy.
Yeah, and you're
Fire
like,
on the
and
shore.
you're like, he's not even fighting Vitor anymore. It's Matyushenko. He's got to dominate this fight, right? Well, I'm going to tell you that guy who watched that on the couch, he has no idea what happens. Because this fight, every fight on this whole card went to decision. So therefore, it went over their allotted time on pay-per-view.
Oh, my word.
And the pay-per-view providers had to cut it off.
They cut it off.
This fight gets cut off like halfway through the second round. So basically, you stayed up and watched this piece of shit card.
It's like 3 in the morning.
And then you have no idea what happens in the main event.
Yeah.
So guess what? UFC had to give people
And by the way, this is 2001. There wasn't no Twitter. You weren't checking the scoring.
So this guy watching with his fan, he's like, huh?
What happened? He's got to read in the newspaper.
He's got his remote. He's like, what? Why did my TV turn off?
He couldn't even read it in the newspaper the next day because they didn't cover the UFC.
They didn't cover the UFC, so he's probably calling the people.
He don't know who won to this day.
So he calls the.
He still doesn't know.
He calls the pay-per-view provider, and he goes,
"What's going on?"
He goes, "Hey,
I paid money for this shit."
And they're like, yeah, sorry, you're like our 100th call. Here's your money back. UFC had to give out a lot of refunds for this one.
And this is a time where they did not
and
need to give out refunds.
And guess what? If anything, they were doing him a fucking favor. Because the rest of that fight ain't shit. Okay.
We're getting canceled.
Yeah, okay. Look, I only feel like I can talk this shit
for so long.
Because Dana White has even said this is the worst event the UFC's ever done.
Especially under the newly, Zuffa era back then. This was like worst case scenario for them. They didn't want this, especially stacking the card so much.
And tough. I mean, man, the UFC tried it for a while where they would they would have 33, they would have the number, but they would have like the name with it.
Yeah. And
it always blew up in their face. Like doing a card titled Knockout, and there was 0 knockouts on the card.
Yeah.
This one, Victory in Vegas.
And although there were people that were victorious,
the fans were not.
Yeah. And that's what matters most.
It's one of the worst fights of all time.
From a
Cards of all time. And it's also one of the 7 3 title fight cards.
If we do a tier list of these 7, this is far below all the others.
Yeah, it's way below the rest of these. Now, I mean, you have some star power on here. It's just these fights just suck. But let's get into the numbers.
Let's get into the nitty gritty, huh?
Yeah. So I decided to do some math here for you. So across these 7 cards, you multiply each one by 3.
21.
21 title fights.
Yep.
There have been 10 and news crowned. That's nearly half. It's basically 50-50.
That's counting John Jones, of course, before the no contest.
Yes, true. However, 3 of those, you put a little asterisk on because they were vacant.
Vacant belts.
So you take that out, 7 of 21. That's 1/3.
Not bad.
So about 33% and news. Therefore,
and 3 of those 7 happened on one card. So
yes,
for
exactly.
what that's worth.
But every single one of these cards has had an and new champion.
Does it continue going into UFC
you have
261 this week?
You have to wonder, because even when you take out those 3 that were, vacant going in, 7 out of 21, 1 out of 3, you have 3 title fights coming up this Saturday. That means
one of them's going. Who's it going to be?
If
history tells us anything.
It's just something a little fun I wanted to present to you guys.
When you look into it, right?
Yeah. But any other final thoughts on these cards before we...
Man, I had a freaking blast doing this.
Yeah,
this was so awesome, so fun, and all leading into one of the biggest cards of the year coming up, the return of fans in Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. We're going to be here breaking it all down for you, of course, on Friday, but this was an absolute blast. Let us know what you guys thought about this. Give us some ideas, more like this, like the history of,
Oh, I have so much fun going back and looking into it. As you can tell, when I get it, I'm very
Don't get Noah into the old days.
I'm very passionate about the history of this sport. I think that's fair to say, right?
Fair to say.
I think we balance each other very well, even though we're interested in all aspects of the sport. I think you do a much better job staying up to date, like today. Like I think you have a better grasp on today's happenings.
And you've done so much research.
I think I've done so much research on the past that I think I have a very
And that impresses me. I'm going to toot your horn for you here on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Because you literally didn't even become a fan until 2016. But therefore, you just went on a whole ass rant about a fight card that happened in 2001.
A fight
When
card
we were
that I didn't
three.
even watch live.
We were 3.
And I was still pissed.
So,
Well, you know what? I appreciate the kind words you gave me right there.
Yeah.
You know, I surprised myself. I didn't realize that when I put my mind to it, I can also learn something.
Yeah. Motivation Wednesdays.
I might not be able to study for shit in school, but boy,
Can you study?
I can study some fights.
Man, if that ain't happening on some merch down the line, I don't know what is.
But as for the rest of the week, Friday we're previewing
It's gonna be big.
the big one, the Mecca. But
The new Mecca, Jacksonville, Florida.
yeah. UFC 261.
3 title fights.
Mm-hmm.
Valentina Shevchenko, Jessica Andrade.
Women's
Zhang
flyweight.
Weili. Women's flyweight. Women's strawweight, Zhang Weili versus Rose Namajunas. Personally, for me, my most anticipated title fight of the year so far. I'm just going to be honest. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for this.
That's a really... I don't know if that is for me.
I know it's up there on your
Ngannou,
list.
it's got to be up there, but I'm like, man, is that really number one? It might
Man,
be.
I've been waiting on this matchup for so long, man. So long from a stylistic standpoint. I can't wait for it. And then, of course, the main event, the rematch. Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal, Part 2. Plus, Anthony Smith, Jimmy Crute, plus Chris Weidman, Uriah Hall. It's a hell of a main card, and there's some good prelims as well.
Yep.
Friday, we break it all down.
And then obviously Monday we'll
Recap it all.
Results and recap.
Yeah.
Till then, Dominic, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Twitter, Instagram, at DCLE14. Find the podcast, more importantly, on Twitter, on Instagram, at BAJ_MMA podcast.
And as for me, if you go to my bio on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_, you'll be taken to our link tree, which gives you the links to all the platforms that the podcast is on, along with social media platforms.
Yes.
That includes the Twitter,
Bump
the
'em
Instagram, the YouTube channel,
Bump
and
'em up.
Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. It's all on there.
Run them all up.
And there's a couple links for the Anchor page. First, leaving a voice message. If you have a thought about an upcoming fight, a news story, if you just want to say hi or tell us we're a piece of shit, you got 60 seconds to do it. And there's another link if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. That just provides with a few dollars a month. All that money goes back into improving the quality of the podcast, whether it be audio equipment or down the line doing a video podcast. So again, you can find all of that if you go to my bio on Twitter or Instagram at ntbaker_. But with that, we're out. We'll see y'all on